Hiya, in this video I'm going to be installing some 52mm gauges to the 323F V6. This is in preparation for a track day that I have booked in June, just to monitor some temperatures and pressures so I don't hopefully kill the engine. So I'll show you where the gauges will be going, and then we'll head inside and I'll talk through what I've got and what I'm going to do with the installation. So the gauges will be going where this pocket goes. So to do this, I'll need to remove the center console and all the stereo gubbins to get access to this, because I think it might be bolted in, not too sure. And yeah, and then I'll use a piggyback connector from the fuse box, so it works off the ignition, and yeah, feed the wiring through to the engine bay to the sensors. So I have a few goodies collected ready to do the install. So for the gauges, I've gone for a company called VDO. They're a German company. A friend of mine has used these in his Scirocco build, but it was the digital version. So I went for the analog to try and keep it with the 90s theme. So I've got an oil temperature and an oil pressure. So I've got the sensor, oil temperature sensor, the pressure sender unit. So the temperature gauge, sensor, sender unit, and the sandwich plate, which I'll get onto in a minute, they were from Merlin Motorsport. Unfortunately, they didn't have any stock of the pressure gauge, so I had to get that elsewhere, hence why that's loose and not in the sort of official packaging. So one good thing about if it was coming with the original box, it came with some bulb covers, red or green. Unfortunately, this one didn't come with it, so I ended up buying some green 501 bulbs to replace it, so that's why they're there. So yeah, I got a fuse box, so the power will go in at the front, and then I've got 4 fuses to take off to various things, so obviously I'll use 2 for the gauges. Piggyback connector for the fuse box, some 6.3mm uninsulated spade terminals. That's for the temperature sensor. It's got on the end there. And I found this twin gauge holder from the MX5 days, so I'm hoping that the fitment will be near enough the same, but I'm not going to know until I give it a try. I've got 20 meters of red and 5 meters of black 17 amp cable. I got this from work, so fairly cheap. I've got white and blue insulation, because there's nothing worse than having various red and black wires and not knowing what's what. So I'll use some stripes to determine what cable's what. I was trying to find some proper traced coloured wiring, but most of the places I found were 30 metre minimum length spools, so yeah, decided against that, and installation tape is a lot cheaper. So the last piece was a sandwich plate. So I went for the non-thermostatic plate because I don't plan on running a oil cooler. So this has got 2 1/8 NPTF takeoffs and 1 3/8 BSP. So I haven't decided which way yet, but the sender unit will go in one, and then the temperature sensor will go in the other. What I like about the Mocal, however you want to pronounce it, sandwich plates, is that the seal is quite wide compared to some of the cheaper alternatives that you can buy. This is quite wide, so this should provide a good seal on the engine block. So, and obviously make sure that you get the correct adapter for the oil filter. So this is M20, so that came with that. So the plan is to build up the sandwich plate with the sender unit and everything on it, so that is just ready to go straight away, and I can have that fitted without any issues with the running of the car. So yeah, that's going to be an easy way of doing it. One way of doing the sender unit is to remove the existing one and run a T connector off the block, and then this in one port, and then the original oil pressure switch on the other. But I didn't know how heavy this sender unit was going to be, so I didn't want to add more weight to the side of the block. Plus I didn't know what access I was going to have to run a T-piece, so I thought that the sandwich plate would have been a much better idea. I have ran a sump plug adapter version on the Colt CZT, I think, or was it the Micra? I can't remember. And obviously doing it that way, that the temperature will read slightly cooler than what it actually is. But you just got to bear that in mind if you go that route. So yeah, once this is all assembled, I can then run wiring from roughly this area round the car into the cabin, and then it's just a case of connecting the lives to the sensors, to the gauges, and earth separately. And then with these, annoyingly, you got to wire in the illumination, so that'll be done separately. But luckily, the cigarette lighter and ashtray are directly below where these sit, so I know I've got two options for that. With these VDO gauges, this ring collar is what holds the gauge in, so let me unscrew it for you and show you. So the body is threaded, the lock and collar is also threaded, so that would drop through like so, and then the collar would then screw on. But looking at it, this option, that's not going to work because the plastic is so close to the thread already, so I'm going to have to figure something out for that. So let's get this assembled and go back out to the car and start routing the wiring. Please excuse the harsh sunlight, very, very warm today. So yeah, unfortunately I can't do much about it. So I've removed the center console trims, and I've now managed to get the pocket out, which is there. It looks like it uses the same tab design as the gauge holder, so fingers crossed it's just a case of pushing it in. I managed to just lift the side of the main trim away and prise the pocket out, so that's that. I've now started to feed one of the sensor wires through. I'll feed this round the dash, make sure that it's all cut to size in the engine bay. Obviously this isn't going to be like this, it's going to be tidied up. I'll route it underneath the airbox, and I'll probably follow the original loom under the distributor along the front and then down to where the sandwich plate's going to be. So yeah, I'll do that twice for the sensors, and yeah, then I can start sorting out the wiring inside for the illumination and main power. So I've now fed both wires through. I've now wrapped the center wires in loom tape, so I now just need to feed it all the way through. Inside I've cable tied the wires to the dash just so I don't lose them, and then underneath it's all tied up, ready. So this centerpiece, center console can all go back in now, and that's now all done. So I'll now start routing the wiring through the engine bay, and then I can make a start on the wiring here. So that's the wiring now fed through. So I went behind charcoal canister, so you can see it coming out of the bulkhead, around the back of the charcoal canister, down the fuel lines along with the vacuum lines, and then went, so this is the cable here, went behind the distributor, underneath, through this trunking, cable tied, and then is now cable tied to the oil pressure switch, which is there. So the excess wire is now looped up and cable tied, ready for the sandwich plate to be fitted, and then I can obviously chop these down to suit. So this is the back of the center console where the cigarette lighter and the ashtray is. So Mazda designed it so it's all in one loom, which goes to this white plug down there. So tracing back the illumination wires, I've already had to join the aftermarket cigarette lighter to the original wiring, and so that all then comes to this red with black trace. Then goes into two, so one goes to this, then the other follows round and go to that one. So I've been using these T-tap connectors for a little while. So it's very much like a Scotch lock. So you'd crimp it over the original wire, and then on the other end, once it's closed, you then use a male spade. So the benefit of this over a normal Scotch is that you can disconnect the wire at any point. So because I can't get the loom off the car because it's so tight and wrapped with the other loom behind the stereo, I'll extend the wires down and I'll connect it to this. So if this piece of the trim ever needs to be removed, then I can just disconnect it and then not have to worry. So because it's not going to be permanently live all the time, permanently on, I'll take two pieces of wire from the gauges, join them into one terminal, and I'll just use the one takeoff for here. I'm sure people will moan about that, but it's going to be much easier than trying to run two lives. So I've now made the looms for the illumination and the gauge earth. So I've now connected the illumination. I've also labelled the ends just in case. So gauge and illumination. So I found a bolt or threaded hole here that's unused. So I've cleaned it up with a wire brush attachment on a drill. So that's now all clean. I'll use that, and then the illumination live is now fed through, so that can be connected to the cigarette lighter. So all that's left to do after this is all plugged in and bolted on is the main power feed, which will go to the fuse box down by the pedals. So I now have the oil filter removed from the heat exchange on the oil filter housing. So I've just cleaned it up with some brake cleaner and some blue roll, so it should all be nice and clean. So next step is to fit the sandwich plate. So that's the sandwich plate now fitted. Ideally I wanted the sender unit and the sensor more here, but there's this shield or bracket or something around this heat exchange which is preventing the sensor to be any further, the sensor to be further round. I didn't want to start cutting into that or anything. So oil filter's now on, that's all on tight. So I'm just going to nip these up just to make sure that they're tight. I know that there is thread poking out of the sender unit, but the thread is tapered and I didn't want to over tighten it. So don't know if you'll be able to see it. So the alternator's there, the wiring is cable tied there, so it's not too far away from the sandwich plate. So I'll go ahead and connect those and then we should be good. So I've now got everything plumbed in and wired in and whatnot. So if I can just move the camera further down. So this is the original wiring that I routed through. You got the temperature sensor, and then just behind it is the sender unit for the pressure gauge. So if I go underneath the car, there we go. I have started the car, made sure it's not leaking. There isn't any leaks, thank God. So yeah, job's a good one. So now to finish the wiring inside the car. So the wiring is now complete inside the car. So a very quick brief rundown. So this is coming off the piggyback fuse connector on the fuse box in the footwell, just there. So then that then goes to this fuse box, which then distributes the power 4 ways. So I've had to change it up. The original loom that I had for the illumination, which went to the cigarette lighter, for some reason that wasn't getting power. So for now, the illumination will be off the ignition, just to make things simpler, hence why I've used the 2 other fuses on the fuse box. So this with the loom tape is the illumination. The earth for the illumination then goes into 1 wire and then goes behind. So the left bolt is for I think the left bolt's the gauges themselves, and then the right bolt is the illumination. So that's that sorted, and then I've got the blue tape on the red wire, and that was to indicate which wire it was in the engine bay. So in this case, oil temperature. So you got sender unit, live, earth, and then main power the other side for the actual needles. So just cable tied it all up, and yeah, the fuse box will sit at the back of the stereo, and then this should all fit in snug. So let's, and there we go. Let's switch the ignition on. So yeah, obviously the oil's below 50 degrees Celsius, so that isn't going to move just yet. So I'll leave the car running for a little bit, let it go up to temperature, and hopefully we see that needle move. So the temperature gauge is now sitting about, I don't know, 80 degrees-ish. So yeah, all working fine. Pressure gauge moves. So yes, all good. Interior's now back in. Very happy with the result of this. I think it suits the car quite well. Quite subtle, not in your face. So yeah, that's one part of the track day prep. Next is to make a fire extinguisher mount, which will go in the front footwell using the front seat brackets. I might do a short video on that. It's probably not going to be very interesting, but hey ho. So yeah, thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.